Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and I am the host of this podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am also a newly minted USA Today best-selling author of the novel Blank. I've created a whole community of book lovers around this podcast, a publishing company, reading retreats, a bookstore, and more. Learn more at zibbymedia.com or follow me on social at Zibby Owens or join the community at Zibby Readers. Julia Phillips is the author of Bear, a novel. Julia is also the author of Disappearing Earth, which was a finalist for the National Book Award and one of the New York Times Book Review's 10 Best Books of the Year. I interviewed her about that book years ago. Julia's work has been translated into 26 languages. A 2024 Guggenheim Fellow, she has written for the New York Times, The Atlantic, and the Paris Review. She is on the board of the Crime Victims Treatment Center, a nonprofit that helps people heal from violence. She teaches at the Randolph College MFA program and lives with her family in Brooklyn. Welcome, Julia. Thanks so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Bear. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
I have already been talking about this book so much. I keep bringing it up. I don't even know. It's in my head. You've totally, your characters, all of it. I keep referencing how cool the setting is and just all of it. I don't know. I feel like in the last 3 book events I've done, I'm like, but I'm reading this book Bear. So
that makes me really happy. I think bears are very hot right now, so it's very topical. I think to be to be excitedly talking about bears, which I always am. So
yes, you are. Yeah, so you're on
part of the conversation.
You're on trend. It's really great.
I've been waiting my whole life for that moment. Thank goodness.
I should send you the pictures of when my family we went to a motel. We took this crazy trip upstate, and there were bears by the pool, and we had to
oh my
down.
Gosh.
A mother bear and her 2 cubs. Yeah, I'll send you the pictures if you care.
I would love to see them. Are you kidding me? Of course I care. I'm like, I want to see these bears in these bikinis by the swimming pool. I want to see this.
It was like out of a movie. They were 3 feet away, and I was
oh my gosh,
what's in that dumpster? And then I was like, that's a loud noise, and I'm thinking, is that going to be like a raccoon? And then all of a sudden, the bears head popped up, and I grabbed my kids by the back of their shirts, and I was like, run! And we raced across the parking lot, went into the room and tried to lock the door, and I was like, stay in the room.
Oh my
God. I just get scared by my own dog behind me after telling that story. But anyway.
Well, yeah. I think your dog is ready to protect you now. I think your dog hears what's going on. I'm here.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like I can speak with authority about bears after
absolutely
after
close encounter.
Okay, tell listeners what Bear is about.
It is about 2 sisters who live in this beautiful place called San Juan Island off the coast of Washington State. And they have a certain plan for how their future will go. They've really been struggling to make ends meet there. And they have had this plan to get off the island. And then their plans change when a bear shows up at their front door. And one sister feels really drawn to this animal. The other sister feels really afraid of it. And this changes the course of their lives.
Wow. Well, the family dynamics between the 2 sisters and the mom, who is, not doing well in the beginning and progressively gets worse and worse and all of that. Mm-hmm. Having a character who works in the snack bar of a ferry is so genius. It's so perfect on so many levels, right? That all the characters that she encounters and just the ups and downs and and how much she hates it, honestly, and how trapped she feels as she just goes back and forth. It's the ultimate. It's so good. How did you think of that?
I really loved that setting of the ferry. So the island is accessible only by ferry, or I guess by, airplane if you're very fancy, which these characters are not, but their lives are really ruled by the ferry. And so working on the ferry felt so natural, so right, and also such a great way for the readers to sort of have an entry point into this world, the sort of rules that define how you get there, how it functions, when you're delayed, how much weather affects you, how much the schedule affects you. And Sam, the main character, has this particular position there. As you said, she's not really a state ferries employee. She works in the galley. She works for food services. Mm-hmm. So she has this job in this essential place, but she is not she doesn't have a pension. She doesn't have state benefits. She's not sort of in the system that makes working on the ferry great. She's in the system that is supplementary to that. And I think that positioning is very, by the way, the amount of sirens behind me is powerful right now.
It will probably come here. I'm serious.
Okay, fantastic. It's going to go from me to you.
I know. I feel like the city is like, yeah, we're like in.
It's bustling.
Yeah.
But yeah, she does not like the position that she's in at her job, and it's sort of befitting, or it speaks to the many different ways in her life she feels like secondary or not, doesn't have what she wants. Mm-hmm. She's a dreamer and a fantasizer, and she has an ambition of living a different life, but she has not been able to access it. And I think her job supports that.
Yes. The whole family feels just so stuck. I mean, the girls had made this plan. They wanted to get off the island, and then their mom was sick, and so they had to stay. And they just felt, it just feels so, they're just so unhappy in a way. They're okay, but they're, it's caretaking and just getting through the day, and the way that you show all the challenges, and when little things happen, or the bills for the doctor, or just like when each thing happens, and how the pandemic affected them financially, like the portrait of a struggling family just trying to adapt to the continuous obstacles thrown by the universe is just, it's so well drawn. And then of course the introduction of the bear on top of everything. Tell me about just crafting the family and the sisters and the mom. And the mom of course had this horrible work related demise of her lungs and everything, and you could just feel, it's almost like the whole family has the air being taken out of them. It's not just the mom.
Yeah I love the way you put that. I started writing this after a year of being very stuck in my own life. I started writing it in 2021 after, a pretty challenging 2020. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And had this sort of paired experience where right as the pandemic began, and I was here in New York, I also had my first kid. And that twinned experience was very difficult. I would not recommend having a baby in a pandemic lockdown. And I think the kind of stuckness I felt, the collision with all these systems that all of us were having, but that I was having in my own life through you're pregnant, you have a baby, all of a sudden you're in this prolonged conversation with health insurance and the healthcare system and the medical establishment. And then also total lack of social services, total lack of childcare, total lack of maternity leave or parental leave that is comprehensive and supportive. Yeah. I think all of those experiences were really influential in shaping this family and shaping these characters. So they have been dealing with healthcare, insurance, the medical establishment, lack of social services for more than a decade now, and because of their mom's illness. Mm-hmm. And they have really their day-to-day has been really challenging, and they're managing that challenge, but it's been very, very challenging for them. And I wanted this book to explore that. I wanted to explore that in their dynamic. They love each other so much. They're there for each other. All three of them live together, these two adult daughters and their mother. And they, I think, love. There's no question that they're going to be each other's supporters. They are going to be there for each other. And where there are cracks in the system that they're falling through, they're going to try their best to provide a safety net for each other individually. But that task is overwhelming sometimes and really, really difficult. And they have managed it as best they can. And it's still really hard. I wanted to really explore that, how that shapes their relationships to each other, how that shapes their relationships to this place and to their work and to their life and to their neighbors, and how that, of course, influences how they react when all of a sudden something changes or the dynamic is different because of this kind of beast that shows up.
Yeah, and let's go to the beast for a moment here.
Let's go to the beast. I always want to talk about the beast.
Yeah. So I read about your sort of lifelong fascination and Grimm's fairy tales and all of that. But talk more about how the bear became the thing.
I think the bear is kind of always the thing for me. I think in my first book, which was also my last book, the only other book I've had come out, I put a bear in there. I love a bear. I do love to think and talk about bears. And the roots of this story, the roots of this novel are found in a lot of different places, but one very direct inspiration is this Grimm's fairy tale called Snow White and Rose Red. And it's about these two sisters who live in this cottage with their mother, quite isolated, and then a bear comes to their door. And in the fairy tale, the bear turns out to be this enchanted prince. They like sort of have these foibles and adventures. They find a bunch of jewels. It's a very different structure than this story is. But I loved this fairy tale as a kid. And I found it so perverse, I would say, and strange and compelling, the way these sisters reacted to this animal. And it always stuck in my mind. As a kid, I would try to rewrite it and not find a way to do that. And I think this was my biggest attempt yet. And it was the one that left me feeling the most satisfied. I have these sisters. A bear shows up at their door, just like this, long ago inspiration. It was never going to be a different animal for me. It was both because of the fairy tale and because of my own love of bears. It was never going to be like, a moose or a lion. And then what happens next? And is it a little perverse? And is it compelling? I hope. I mean, my fingers are crossed.
Yes. I think it is. You've had so much early, enthusiasm for the book too. I mean, it's sometimes when I feel like there's buzz around a book, I'm like, could it really be that good? Do you know what I mean? Like, not just yours. I mean, in general, like, what is
I know what you mean.
Sure?
I know what you mean.
And then you read it and you're like, oh, it is really good. And that's always such a relief.
I love that. I think you're in a place where you hear the buzz. I feel that my experience often is just like sitting alone in my home, not knowing what is buzzing or not. So I'm glad to witness that experience.
There's a lot of sort of scientific stuff here, and then you even have somebody from the science department who's tracking everything. And all, where did all that come from? Do you have to research? Did you research for this? Did you research for the last one?
Absolutely, yes, definitely a lot of research. I mean, the way that the bear behaves in this book, the book is rooted in a fairy tale, but it's not meant to feel anything but like hyper realistic in a way. That I want it to feel very, 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 very grounded. And to me, that is sort of the most appealing part of fairy tales, the way they would give you all these details and you would say, what is this weird world? I want this to be the same way, to give a lot of details and feel like, what's this weird world? So the way that the bear behaves in the book is, I would say, at the extreme end of what's possible. It's not at all, it's not like unrealistic, but it's unlikely that the bear would behave this way. The way that the sisters behave is also unlikely, and I would say unwise. And there are characters around them who say, this is not how one should engage with this animal.
Yeah.
And like, it's very much on them. The way they are reacting to it, the way they are engaging it is shaping its behavior and kind of amplifying they're engaging like a feedback loop with this animal that is making the stakes higher and more difficult and more dangerous, which is fabulous for a narrative, but not good bear behavior. So I really loved having this character from the wildlife department providing a kind of check, a reality check, and a chance for us to see like, this is the outside world. This is what like someone who knows what they're doing, how would react, what they would say. But yeah, that is not how the sisters behave. They do not listen to that good advice, for sure.
So you had a baby during lockdown. You had another baby I saw about a year ago, right? Yeah. And you have on social a picture of yourself like vomiting from pregnancy with your son, sort of, looking on with such concern and care. It's so sweet.
It was very supportive. It was very sweet.
So, I have 4 kids. It is you're in it, right? You're in the weeds. How are you pulling this off? You're still writing beautiful fiction. When and how are you doing this? Like, do you not feel that your brain, like I felt like my brain was mush for so long, for years,
For years? Yeah, totally.
And yet you're doing this. I mean, it's amazing. So tell me about how you were able to do this.
After my first kid was born, my brain was mush. At the end of pregnancy, I just watched Bon Appetit Test Kitchen all day long. And that's all I did. This was like spring 2020 at this point. I was just, after he was born, I really talked about a postpartum anxiety. And it was, again, like I get to pick, this was June 2020 that he was born, right? In New York City. Like, this was not a great time in where I live, in the world. It's not a great time in anyone's life. It certainly was not a great time in mine. And the idea of writing or enjoying myself or having fun seemed really far away from what I was doing. I felt like my priority for more than a year was just like, stay safe, keep everything as stable as possible, don't disrupt anything. I was afraid to go outside. Like, the idea of even, I don't know, traveling in my imagination was daunting. I felt so far from the person I was. I think those circumstances were extreme, and it ended up, writing this book ended up being a real return to like, okay, maybe I'm not going outside, but I can imagine going outside, or maybe I feel stuck, but I can imagine someone else who feels stuck. It was like the first bit of getting to edge a little bit away from myself, or a little bit away from my own experience, or a little bit away from all the things I was afraid of, towards something that could be exciting, could be different. And it ended up being so, dare I say, healing, just to imagine and play pretend and write down a story that was so different from anything I'd ever written before, but so fun and so exciting. I think that the extremity of that, if that's an applicable word in this instance, I think how extreme that feeling was at the time helped me a lot when the second kid was born. Because when the second kid was born, I was like, oh my God, we can do things, and people can come over and someone else can hold the baby when you're tired, and like, breathing air is not going to kill you. And it just felt it was a relatively like such an easier transition. And I was at that point, already in edits for this project. I was like, this is fun. This is delightful. I didn't feel anymore that disconnection from like the person I'd been. It felt like a smoother thing. Did you, 4 kids, did your last 2 are twins?
First 2 are twins.
First 2 are twins. Okay. I have to talk about extreme circumstances. I have to imagine that was a pretty extreme entry into parenthood.
Yeah, that's true. That's why I can't imagine, doing this.
Well, I mean, I did not have twins. I did not have to, like, did it get easier with each kid or each birth, or was it just a re-entry? It's so variable for every kid, I guess.
Yeah. But, I mean, I had 6 years in between the twins and my next kid. So
that seems reasonable.
When I had one kid, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a walk. And she was such an easy baby too. So I was like, oh my God, people experience life this way.
That was me this last time around. Yeah, totally.
Right? It's amazing. Like,
it's
if
amazing.
This were me, I would have more kids all the time. I just keep doing this.
I was like, well, I can have 1 million kids, which I can't have 1 million kids, but relatively easy.
But I wouldn't have known how easy it was. So I was very grateful for that. That's how life works, right?
Yeah, totally.
But
of course.
Yeah. So are you, like, if this were in an English class, right, in 10 years or 20 years, and people are like, okay, like, what do we think the significance of the bear is in these women's life? Like, how should we read into this? Like, what is your answer to that?
I think the bear is just the bear. Like, from the writer's standpoint, the bear is a bear. It's an animal that showed up. It's just an animal. And I don't think it's not a symbol. It is like an animal that has fur, it breathes, it takes shits on their sidewalk.
Yes,
it
that was lovely. Thank you for those.
Hey, anytime. I think the way that they see it, I think both the sisters react to it as like, this is a visitation from another world, sort of like, this is something. I think that Elena, the older sister, who's really drawn to this animal, feels like, well, I've been working so hard for so long. I have been really had to just go through day by day. Like, don't think about what's coming next. Don't lose track of it. Like, I just really have to hold on, grip as tightly as I can to my responsibilities, to my tasks, to like just getting through the next moment. And I think to her, the bear is almost like, it's such a joy. It's a reward. It's a kind of way of escaping the life she's been living and have this ecstatic, transcendent experience to be able to be close to something that is so different, so magnificent, like majestic. I think really, it's a gift for her. Sam, her younger sister's reaction is very different. I think Sam sees like, here is the here's like a disruption that's going to ruin us. You know, this is this dangerous thing that shows up from the outside that is driving a wedge between us, that is like actually quite literally very dangerous to us, physically, dangerous to our lives. And it's just messing everything up. We had a certain way of thinking, and this is destroying that. The reaction that Sam has to the bear is she sees it like as a malevolent force, I think, in lots of ways, which I would say it is not. It is a bear. But, it is dangerous. It is threatening.
Well, I'll peek in on some English classes in 10 years because I don't think that's what they're going to say.
if they're reading it in English classes in 10 years, what I'll actually say is, what are you doing?
No.
You're reading this book that's all full of bear poop and curses and...
Okay, maybe they won't, but I think they might.
maybe, probably not on like the middle school level, I think.
No, I'm thinking high school. This is like 11th grade.
Yeah, high school. Yeah. 11th grade, I can see.
11th grade.
Fingers crossed.
What is your next project?
I'm working on another project that is, again, about women and violence and isolation. I think those are the subjects that I love to think about. It's set on Cape Cod, which I'm very, very excited about because my husband was born and raised on the Cape, and my in-laws still live there. And I had, before I met him, when I was a child bride here, I was 20 when we met, I did not know I thought like Cape Cod was the Kennedys, and I didn't know what it was like to live there year round. I really didn't understand there are people who do live there year round. I didn't understand the particular demands of this particular place. And I think through him, got really interested in a setting that is isolated. Like what does that? I grew up feeling very stuck in suburban New Jersey, but it wasn't until I got to the Cape that I was like, oh, this is like what being stuck looks like, can look very different from the malls of New Jersey. And I think I've been trying to write about that for a long time. And in this next project, I get to write about it a little bit more directly. I get to go to the Cape myself.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I'm really excited.
It's right in time for the launch of this Cape Cod Book Festival.
Oh, I'm very excited about Cape Cod. I'm very excited about Martha's Vineyard book festivals. I'm very excited about Nantucket book festivals. Of course, the book doesn't actually exist yet, but I'm already like Sam. Like Sam and Bear. I'm a fantasizer, and I like to fantasize about how good life will be before I actually live it or even have any hope of living it. So,
yeah, this is one of those secrets. It's like write a book where you can be quite strategic if you want about where you set your book. Like where is... Yeah,
I mean, sometimes it works. Sometimes the place where you set your book then invades Ukraine and you will never go back there again. So,
okay. Good point.
Your mileage may vary. I wouldn't recommend Russia currently, probably as a setting. Or maybe I would. I want to read always books set everywhere.
True. I didn't mean to be flip about that. Of course,
No.
I knew where your last book was set and all of that. So
Zibby, I did not think you were being flip. I think I'm being flip.
Okay.
So no, you're doing great.
I was just saying how great you'd get to go to Cape Cod. But anyway.
Oh, I know. Totally. I feel the same exact way. I feel that's what I feel like is the gift of research, novel fiction research. You set up someplace and then you get to just hang out there.
in college, my brother was a runner at a restaurant, like who, took the food from one place to the other, like in the kitchen on Cape Cod, and lived in like this.
Where on the Cape?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. Yeah. I'm not familiar with it. I've only been there the one time when I visited him, and he and the guys he was living with, I like wouldn't even sit down on the chair. It was so disgusting. You know what I mean? Like it was so. They were like 19 years old.
I feel like that is like visiting a brother's house is always like that. Visiting a brother's apartment.
And I do feel like I got a good taste of Cape Cod there, and like meeting the people in the back of the restaurant, and the whole like the rundown par 3 mini course, and like, do you know what I mean? Like I have it all like in my mind. So anyway.
It's a vibe, and it's also like a stunningly beautiful place. It's so gorgeous. But yeah, it's a vibe, definitely. Like there's a new book coming out in a couple weeks, actually, end of this month, called Wait by Gabriella Burnham, and it's also a second novel. So it's set on Nantucket, and talks so much about like summer people and the people who live on Nantucket year round, and she just captures the Nantucket vibe so incredibly, which is a place, I mean, I'm saying that I don't think I've ever been to Nantucket, but from a distance, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is
you would imagine this is what it was.
I imagine. And she grew up there. Like she knows very, very well. And I just love seeing it through her eyes.
Yeah. I feel like I read something similar set in the Hamptons, and now I'm blanking on what.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I will live in
Oh,
wait
no,
for the
no. Amanda,
recommendation.
well, it's nonfiction, but Amanda Fairbanks
Yeah.
wrote a whole book, but it was set a while ago, but still.
Wow.
Anyway, off topic.
Incredible.
Okay. Anyway, Julia,
On topic.
do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'm going to blow aspiring authors' minds, okay?
I'm ready.
I know
I'm ready.
I know you've never heard these before, okay? I have 3 go-to things that I tell myself, and that when other people ask if I have anything to say, these are my 3 go-to things to say. So that's what I repeat to myself. So 1 is write as much as possible. 2 is read as much as possible. And 3 is like build a community as much as possible, or connect to a community as much as possible. I say 1, the writing part, because I think we get really psyched out sometimes, or we, like perhaps one might, if one's name is Julia, sort of get so paralyzed by how good you want the writing to be that you don't actually write. So just write, use the muscles. It's okay. You might have an off day, you might have an off year, not a big deal. Just keep going. Read as much as possible. Or off like decades, honestly.
Off
but then it's okay. Whatever. Like you're doing it because you like to do it. Yeah, just roll with it. I read as much as possible. I think a lot of times when I feel stuck, it's because I'm not reading. And it teaches you so much, and just read whatever is interesting to you, and don't worry about whether it would impress your English teacher in this mythical 11th grade English class. Just read and connect to people. I was blown away by how much my craft improved and my understanding of what a writing career looks like when I started to talk to other writers. And that could be online, it could be in person, it could be going to readings, it could just be I don't know, hanging out at your local bookstore, whatever, but just building a world or entering a world where you're connected to books and writers really opens your eyes to what's possible, which you've done, Zibby. I mean, you have built your world.
Oh.
Do you feel like it changed the game for you?
I just am so happy. Literally, I love what I do. And it's such an amazing community of people. And I mean,
love that.
Yeah. And, some people we have all different viewpoints on a lot of things, and yet we all can connect over books and fictitious characters and human emotions and experiences. And I think that's something that we all have to really focus on these days in particular.
We can connect over those, and then we can argue over which character we liked and which character we didn't. We can then argue over the endings of those books that we are connecting over. And we can have many literary disputes, which I always love.
Better than political. So I don't know. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much. This is really great. And you should be very proud, in particular, given the life stage you were in, but any life stage, really captivating. And yeah, congrats.
Thank you so much, Zibby. Thank you for talking to me. I really appreciate this. And thank you for putting up with all the background noise behind me. I really appreciate it.
I barely even heard it. And I had a nice quiet half an hour. So that was a blessing. I jinxed it. Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social at Zibby Owens and at Zibby Readers.